Right, thanks for coming, everybody. Apologies to those who sat through the first two slides, but we'll go those again. So, architecting for the new digital. I want to cover what is the new digital, what architectures are needed to support it, and how do we use those architectures to drive the future. So what is the new digital? Well, the new digital is two things. It is a technology, but it's also the audience. And if we talk about the audience, if we look at the millennials, or Generation Y. So Generation Y, people born between 1998, between the 1980s and 2000s, they represent a quarter of the UK population. Many of them are using social media. They've got used to storing their data in the cloud. The generation that comes after that are the Generation Z. These are the people who were born after 1995. These are the first school children taking phones with them into the school and accepting what they read on social media. So to them, they go to social media for their news. They go into it for recommendations. So this is quite a game changer. In terms of the technology, we were all used to developing websites, and then mobiles and tablets came along. So we started to develop mobile applications. And I think what's been happening with social has turned that on its head a little bit. So most people, I say most of you, probably use 5 applications on your mobile phones 88% of the time. So almost never using other applications. And of those 5, 3 of them are likely to be social applications. So what that means is people are not downloading apps. So for smaller organizations, putting that energy into developing mobile applications isn't useful anymore. But there's alternatives. We'll cover some of those alternatives in a second. Essentially, those alternatives are conversational technologies. So voice bots, chat bots. And we've gone from what was 4 devices to many, many channels that we now need to support. We're mentioning here not just the physical devices, but also the channels in terms of Microsoft Messenger and Snapchat, and also in the future, car-connected devices. And if we take that a step further, this is somebody's vision of what will happen in the future, where parts of what we're wearing are going to be internet-enabled. So how do we architect for all of this? One of the ways is by integrating with the social channels. So this is an example of KLM. KLM launched this, a way of downloading your boarding passes from within Messenger. And within 3 weeks, they've got 50,000 people downloading their boarding passes this way. People didn't need to download their app. Another example is Uber. Most people would order Uber via their app, but Uber recognized that a lot of people don't want to do that. So you can now order Uber through Messenger. And another interesting example, this is coming from shopping. So H&M. You can choose a piece of clothing that you want to buy, and they'll use bots to recommend other articles of clothing so that you can put things together. And I think the real game changer, certainly for those of you who might be thinking, okay, well, how does this apply to my clients? You know, where is this leading to? Is customer service. So it's very easy for brands to lose customers through bad customer service. And a lot of people are quite happy to go through virtual assistants for this. So going back to the millennials, 63% of the millennials are happy to go through virtual assistants rather, or actually prefer than talking to somebody on the phone. People want to solve their own problems if they possibly can. And these conversational technologies allow us to guide the user through the issues that they've got, the issues with their customer service, and only go to humans for the complex cases. And this means that we've got a way of, this is extremely relevant to most businesses that we work with. So how do we architect the new digital? Now, for the new digital, there are 2 key drivers to me. There were two significant things that I saw. And one was a talk I went to almost 3 years ago when Amazon first came out with Amazon Lambda. So Lambda is what they call function as a service. What this means is I can, as a programmer, create some code and not worry about which server it sits on. I don't need to worry about the scaling of it. I don't need my DevOps anymore, almost, right? So we're talking about a DevOps community where people can very easily create code and deploy it. More so, this diagram is actually illustrating how I can create a whole functional website without using servers, without using DevOps, and most importantly, I'm only paying for the hits. I'm not paying for a server to be running in the background. I'm only being charged for what's being consumed. Now, I didn't think that this would apply to my projects because we've got lots of DevOps and lots of servers. And I'll come back to that later in the talk. The second thing that drives the architecture, this one was quite interesting to me. It was my niece. My niece wanted a Christmas present, and she said, oh, I want a mobile phone for my homework. And this intrigued me, because for your homework, I thought you would want to be able to type, so you'd want a tablet or a laptop. And my sister said, no. She doesn't talk, she doesn't type on her phone, she talks to it. Her friends and herself, they only talk to their devices. They don't know how to type. And again, I didn't see the relevance to my projects until a little later, and I'll share that with you. So, on my current project, my client has got a key business function that's on a mainframe, or was on a mainframe. Core business functionality, the mainframe was put in a few years ago, it was struggling, but because it was tied into the functions, the basic business services, it's fundamental to what they do. So one of the things that we suggested to the clients is that we wrap it with an ESB, and we provide, instead of using bespoke interfaces, which were very similar to screen scraping, we put an ESB in front, and now we can use industry standards to talk to it. So now that fundamental business service can be used by other parts of the business. The business then said, okay, it's really good that we've got these services being used throughout the business, but what about my customers? So we were pragmatic. We punched a hole through the firewall, we secured it with certificates so it was secure, and we enabled the biggest clients of our client to access this fundamental service. The issue with this is it takes a long time to onboard. So when we did a review with the client, we said, well, actually, why don't we put in place an API management system? And then people can come and self-service. They can discover your APIs, they can subscribe to using them, and instead of using certificates, we've got client ID and secrets, we've got attributes that people can self-serve and use to identify themselves. So this brought the number of people using this service, external customers, from a handful to the hundreds. And the onboarding time has come down from 2 weeks to 2 days. The problem is that my mainframe is still struggling. So let's improve the mainframe. So we'll put some microservices in there. What do I mean by microservices? Essentially, let's look at what the mainframe was doing. Let's find the fundamental services and implement those independently so that we can scale them. So we've got a set of functions that we can scale, and if we do it the right way, and this is going to be a bit of a jump of faith, effectively, if I scale my microservices correctly, I can treat them as a set of functions. So lo and behold, we come back, full circle back to Amazon Lambda. I can now treat my microservices as functions as a service. So that when my client comes to me and says, right, we've got our clients talking with servers, how do I get my customers consuming this service? I'm going to treat the basic function, my Lambda function, as a basic service, and I'm going to expose it to some browsers. So how do I do that? The client had a constraint on us. He said, whatever you build, you need to deploy it across a set of CMSs. I don't have just one website, I've got multiple ones. So we decided to build something as an Angular application. So it's a JavaScript application that I can lift and shift and put on any website that I want to. But fundamentally, the function that it's calling is the same, but there's different attributes. So my business clients are identifying themselves. If I'm using an Angular app, people can very easily scrape the identification parameters that I'm using. So I need different ways of protecting this Angular service. Moreover, I may want to identify the users that are coming in. So fundamentally, I'm using the same basic service, but I need to morph the function and change it in subtly different ways so that I can use it with a browser rather than using it with a server. Another example of why this interface needs to be different is typically it'll be on a different domain. So I've got cross-domain issues, or CORS is the acronym that's used. But interestingly, what I've got here is a way of consuming the back-end service through browsers, and I'm not having any scalability problems. I can put a CDN in front of my CMSs, and I've got essentially to the picture that I showed you right at the very beginning, where I can deploy functions to my clients and not worry about scalability. The next part of this was, we said to the client, well, actually, all of these clients are pulling data, and that's quite inefficient. Why don't we push the data to the users? So we put in a client push technology, or we're in the stages of discussing that with the client. And what we're proposing, is that we push information using browser push. And this means that people who are not browsing the website anymore, if their data changes, they'll get a small notification box and say, we've got some more data for you. Are you interested in seeing this? Anybody who's used Facebook will have seen this function. You get a little pop-up window, even when you're not logged into Facebook. And similarly, for our business clients, we should be using push technologies. So we use techniques like webhooks, and we're also discussing with the client whether we should be using AMQP and MQTT, so proper notification technologies for this. The next stage that we need to think about is supplementing the information that I give to the user. I may want to simply just store their history somewhere. I may want to store some of their preferences. Now, I could go and build another service down at the back end inside the client, but actually, the client's business doesn't care about this information. It's all things that they'd rather not worry about. But my API management is in the cloud. And in this case, it was actually on Plumix, but it could have been on Azure. It could have been on AWS. So why not use the capabilities that are in the cloud environment to provide additional back-end services? So I've now got back-end as a service that I'm using to supplement what I'm doing higher up. We then started to discuss with the client, what do we do about Generation Y and Generation Z? They want to use social media and conversational devices. How do I adapt this for conversations? I'm going to show you two slides about what we mean by conversations, because I know it's a fairly new technology. You may not be that familiar with it, but I think it might help with the subsequent slides. So by voice and chatbots, we don't want to write the same thing for all the different channels. So I need some sort of channel integration so that I can write once and deploy across all of the different voice and chat devices. I need to identify the chunks of conversation that I'm going to have with my users. So a very simple example, we all get parcels. I might want to know, do I have any deliveries today? If I do, I'm not going to be there. Can you deliver them to my neighbour? Or actually, can you take them to send them to a pickup or to my neighbour? And if it's a neighbour, which neighbour? So all of these different parts of the conversation are intent, and I need to find out where are the variable parameters in that. like the word yesterday or neighbour. And then I need to link them into dialogues, because as humans we don't say things in a regimented manner. Our dialogues, we can swap the order of sentences and they still are meaningful. So I need to design the dialogues. And then finally, all of these chat bots are actually learning machines in the back end, and we need to train them. If I put all of that together, what I'm saying is I need a bot framework for this. There's quite a few out there that can do the channel integration for me. A lot of the examples that I've been using the Google API.ai. We're currently doing for the same clients something to do with customer service, where we're using Microsoft Lewis. And also we've got colleagues who are using the Oracle toolset for this. The bot needs to call some sort of information service. Interestingly, if you're using Amazon, they almost mandate you call function as a service. Why? Because they know it will scale, and they know what the NFRs are, they know what the constraints are. And then finally, we'll make a call to the backend service. So if I put all of that together, I end up with another function. So you can see here I've got lambda 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which are all slightly different for the same channel, all calling the same fundamental function that's provided by my client. And this is just another way of abstracting that information. And what you'll see here is we started off with systems of record. We've wrapped them using an application or an ESB. We provide microservices for some of them. We need to adapt those for each channel, provide access through my API gateway. And what you'll be seeing here is, essentially what I've got here is not just API management. What I've got here is integration platform as a service. I've also got some back end. So essentially, I've got a hybrid integration platform. So a lot of what I've talked about today, a lot of it we've actually implemented for the client. Some of it is prototypes, but it's all real stuff that we've been doing. And you can see that we've taken something which was an integral function to the client and adapted it for multiple channels. So in terms of lessons learned, I've got 3. The first one is a lot of what you see has been done with agile teams. But we need to make sure that the agile teams work together, and that needs architecture. So I call this architected agile. Agile needs architecture, especially when you're doing this sort of thing. There's just too many groups that need to work together on this. The second one is, this isn't actually that easy. People are not used to using APIs and exposing them in this way. Back-end developers won't appreciate the needs of the channel devices and vice versa. So there needs to be sharing of information. And that's not just the developers, it's also the architects, it's the support teams. So we need to build up the experience of the people who are supporting this. And also the business. So we've got a talk later on this afternoon where we go into that in a little bit more detail. And the final takeaway I want to give you is all of these channels, all of this, there is a business opportunity for the brand, for your brands, for your clients' brands. And if you don't take that opportunity, the millennials and the Generation Z, they're going to go somewhere else. And you're going to lose them. So, thank you very much.